Hello again. How are you?
Hey Jen, I'm doing fine. How are you?
I'm good. So you can look at like the midterms, and so far I find it very interesting what they've been doing in terms of analyzing, a concrete thing and trying to articulate it. I think that concreteness has helped some groups to really come up with more pointed, specific ways of looking at the phenomenon and talking about it, which I'm really happy about. So that's one thing, right? Which is super challenging, by the way.
Yeah. People did a really, really good job, and I'm glad people had that opportunity to unpack something that already exists.
Mhm.
I feel like our ideas were formulated really, really thoroughly. So, yeah, I'm still getting through mine though. So, guys,
Well, no,
just
I mean,
give me a minute. I guess,
same here. I'm not quite done yet, but
but they're good.
at least what I've seen so far. And actually that brings up the kind of topic that we were discussing more about today, which is this idea of, as I'm reading through midterms, this happens every year. I notice one of the common things I continually say year to year to year is this idea of, what exactly does it mean to design something specifically and with deliberation and intent,
Hmm.
as opposed to, just talking about design in a very vague and superficial, open kind of way. Um, and I think it's hard for new people to understand what that difference is. Many people have asked me, what does it mean, Professor Quata, when you say be more specific, or what does it
Yeah.
mean, And I don't know, what do you have the similar kind of thought?
Yeah, I've noticed that pattern, and I think there are different levels, I think, to different conversations and contexts, right? So, like, if you're really trying to pitch an idea, you might stay on the surface level of it. But
Mhm.
if you're talking to other people who are also in the field, you want to go several levels deeper, like
Yeah, so
talking
that's the
about,
question. What does it mean to go several
yeah,
levels deeper? And what does
yeah.
one level look like? And what does level 5 of the dungeon look like is the question,
Okay, the
right?
dungeon. Yeah. And I don't know. I mean, I think at least, and that's hard for me to articulate, to be honest. I think understanding the person's rationale, like not simply just saying, I am proposing that you bring in groups or collaboration or discussion forums for this reason, but taking it to the next level of your ultimate goal here is for them to walk away with this better understanding or mastery of this. And by virtue of using groups at this time, you get the opportunity to give them one, two, three, four, five, six, whatever it is, and then they can start to develop this mastery or understanding by virtue of working together in groups.
I
And
see.
it's not,
What's tricky here is, like, you're talking about these ideas, but what do you mean by of mastery of this?
yes, you're
Right.
right. The
So, for example, if I was going
specificity.
to bounce off what you're saying, right? Like, I think what it comes down to, everything you're saying is true. But what do those variables like this mean? And I think
Hmm. Hmm.
it's like it really comes down to your specific domain and goals and objectives that you're trying to answer. And if this isn't articulated really clearly, it's going to be very hard to know what it means to design more specifically for collaboration, for example, or for discussion. So, for example, it's like research says collaboration is a good thing. Of course, I
Always,
mean, like,
always.
everyone, there's a lot of people that say that. That is my rationale for why, when people are learning this, they will collaborate together. Okay. So on one hand, right, it sounds like there's a rationale for that. Right?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
research says collaboration is good. Therefore, to learn this, they will. But that's not a design, right? Did you need to pay $10,000, $15,000 of tuition at TC to come up with that? And the answer is no, you didn't, right? But what is design? Well, I think, again, if it comes back to objectives. So, for example, if it comes to this objective of, look, in business, right, like, people need to make, a strategic decision, right, about whether to hire or fire people, given a certain kind of, you know, context, situation, business wise.
Yes.
And that incorporates these kinds of concepts, like the concept of what it means to have organizational cohesion,
Yes.
right? What it means to negotiate, what it means to whatever. So if, for example, in our objectives, one thing is understanding what it means to negotiate, or another secondary objective is understand team cohesion, whatever that is. Now, for example, if you're talking about collaboration, right? You have something to hook a design into. And so my question would be, how would you design the collaboration that gets people to actively think about what it means team cohesion?
Yes, there's alignment.
There is, right? And same
Yeah.
with designing discussion. Like, all right, discuss about what,
About
right?
what?
Oh, well,
Yeah.
we should fire everybody. That's my decision. I mean, but does that discussion directly relate to understanding something about negotiation, or does it help to, emphasize something about understanding team cohesion? What is it about team cohesion? Are there facts they need to understand about the concept, be able to make inferences, like so explanations? Are there things they need to be able to like recognize when they see it? Oh, this is good cohesion, bad cohesion. And so like if those were your sub targets, then discussion, how would you get them to talk about that? The design is more like the teacher would start with a prompt. The prompt would be, take a look at the example video and what are the visible signs that you think indicate good or strong cohesion? Now that question is the design, the specific design. And I can say the reason I have that design is to get people to understand what team cohesion, the concept, looks like. And for people to be able to negotiate the meaning of, wait, I thought that was an indicator. No, I don't think that's an indicator, right?
Yeah.
The indicator is this. No, wait, and right. So that's where the active mind's on it. Collaboration, right? Are you having them finish a task together, or in sharing things like, hey, let's collaborate in terms of splitting this project into 5 parts? No, that's not collaboration that helps people understand something about negotiation. But if you're collaborate, the design might be, we're going to pair people into 2 teams, each of 2 people. Each group comes up with their points that they can't give up, and some things they're willing to give up. And then they need to come to some understanding. And through this collaborative activity, they are making that experience one that they are going through to understand the dynamics of what negotiation is. That is the design, not collaboration.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
And this is hard, I think. And actually, I think it stems like this week, we're talking about PBL, CBL, right? Problem-based learning, case-based learning. And to design these 2 strategies, it's in my mind, it's more than just following a series of bullet pointed steps, right?
Correct. Yep. Agreed.
Like, that's not the design. But what are your thoughts in the field? What do they do?
In the field. So I think we've got some good examples like what you described, where we're talking about this case. I was going to say like, oh, I like this case that you're talking about, where I
just made it up.
It's good, but it's actually a one that I know for sure we've covered something similar, especially because we used to use a lot of cases from like HBR. And this is a common business school type of case where you want people to think through the scenario. These are the things you have to work with. These are the factors. Consider all of them, go through our framework, do whatever you need to do to arrive at a decision, and explain your rationale behind going through this process and arriving at the decision. But I think there are good cases like what you described, and there are not so great cases.
Like what do you think makes a good case versus a bad case in the context of from the designer's perspective?
Yeah, I think in the past when I've called it a bad case, it may not necessarily be that the intention, there's a good intent there, but whoever the original instructional designer was you can't customize that experience so that it fits the learning objectives for that group or the audience. Going into a prepackaged set of cases like you'd find and I don't know, I'm going to go back to HBR. It's not that I hate HBR. They're great, but you'll find a lot of things where you could pull a case on management, and it's very generic and it's very superficial. When they say, discuss these questions, it's like, I'm sorry, I'm going to talk about our book. The application questions at the end of this book?
Yeah.
So I like some of them, but a lot of them are just kind of like very surface level. Very like, this doesn't feel genuine. This doesn't feel like this situation would have actually happened in the real world context. I don't think the students really have any information they need to make a really meaningful decision about what's happening here in this case. This case was like 5 sentences long and doesn't really explain the complexities that are actually going on here. So those are the things when I'm looking at the prepackaged cases, I'm like, I'm not sure these are addressing the things that we really want people to go through. Like we have a program called negotiation and conflict resolution.
Yeah.
Really, that's why I said like the case you gave is exactly what we would have people design out so that we can talk about the issues here, the parties here, the stakeholders that are involved. And for the most part, you don't want something that's too superficial, but you want people to be able to do deeper dives and unpack the issues that are actually there and get the content going. So those are the
Yeah.
things that we've seen, I think.
Yeah, and so to kind of like bounce off that, it's like cases, right, are basically stories, right? That are data
Yeah.
points from which we should be able to extrapolate some kind of learning from
Mhm.
in a nutshell, right? Um, Problem-based learning is a strategy where you have a problem scenario, right, that undergoes several stages like identifying facts or generating hypothesis and figure out your knowledge difference, apply that. But those aren't the design.
Yes.
The design is, for example, in the PBL, problem-based learning, what is the specific problem you're posing to your learners? Because through solving that problem in these steps that PBL says are the
Yes. Yes.
steps, they will confront important concepts and understandings and have to negotiate their misunderstandings in order to, solving the problem will get them through those experiences to have a bigger contextualized understanding that they can construct in their head. And so to do that, when you're saying things like they're going to generate hypotheses, just saying they will generate hypotheses isn't the design. The design came from where was your objective that you chose this problem, and how in posing this problem and supporting the generation of hypotheses do you make sure that they think of the important things that are related, or when they're researching things or applying, that they're doing it in a way that constructs knowledge. And so the design is really about how does the teacher support it? Like, what do they say? What other supports do they give? What kinds of other supporting activities might be built in, right? And with your case-based, it's like, yeah, like a case can be as short as a prompt, right? With more generalizable things, or very long and rich, right?
It could be. Yeah.
But with the short ones, just giving that is not necessarily going to help you to achieve the kind of learning you want. But if you have a very specific objective, like what specifically about negotiation do you want, then that short case might be the starting point, but you might have to add other kinds of content to the case, like data that will help people to discuss it or think about it. And that's where the design is. What would that look like, right? What kinds of other, are you going to have quotes from different players in this and what they need? How does that how do the collection of those narratives help the discussion or help the activity in which they need to resolve something, which will get them to have to think about these concepts or these needs or these ideas that then get them a bigger constructive understanding of what negotiation is.
Yeah.
Or, once they get into and they do the, discussion, what are they discussing? Like anything? What do you think? Should they do A or B? Or should the questions be guided in a way of why do you think that, this theory applies in making this assessment or decision? Or why do you think that these people, are coming to this kind of impasse or whatever, right? But those are the questions that I just asked, right? That a teacher would say, like literally say, that's the design.
Design. Yeah, that's the design.
I think that's
where
really
the learning
hard for
happens.
people to understand,
Yeah, I think that's the thing I like to emphasize with PBL, is that, or at least problem-based learning, is that the emphasis is on the process. That's where the learning happens, and not just here are a series of steps, but why do those steps actually help people dig deeper and understand that problem and work as a group and unpack.
That's where I come. I'm always saying, like, when I mean specificity of design, that's what I mean. And maybe next week, we continue this discussion, because I think by then we'll actually have like all the midterms like ready, and we'll have a lot of cases in our heads to talk about. And that might just be fun to talk about some of the things we've seen and the way we think about it and what it means when we give feedback specific. How does it direct? How does it connect? That would be fun.
I think that's a great idea. I'm looking forward to it.
All right, we'll do that. All right.
Thank you so much.
Short one, but I will see you next week then.
All right. You guys have a good one.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.